Hey folks, I'm just headed to the office. I got some gas first, so I don't have to edit this video. Woo! Should be an interesting week. We have some people that have traveled in from out of the country, so I'll be probably driving to the office every day this week. But we're going to be going to experience devs for a topic today. I don't have it pulled up because I'm literally operating a motor vehicle, but the poster was talking about code reviews and pull requests, and sort of they're feeling like, from their perspective, they're kind of frustrated because it seems like people aren't really getting what they believe is the primary reason for pull requests and code reviews. And they had some interesting points, but based on like the flood of responses that came in, I feel like they sabotaged themselves a little bit. So maybe this was their actual perspective and they got kind of flamed for it, but one of the things that they end up making a statement about is kind of like, hey, I have code that needs to go into the front end and like, it's really important, so like, you should just approve it. is kind of what it seemed like they were saying. I don't actually believe that was exactly their intention, but I think how they wrote it made it seem like, look, like if it's on fire, let me push it through, and don't actually review it, kind of thing. Based on everyone who was responding, they were kind of like, hey, kind of seems like that's one of the things you should go figure out. So I'm going to talk through this, give you my perspective on code reviews, pull requests, that kind of stuff. And if you're new to the channel, just a friendly reminder that this channel is driven by your questions. So feel free to leave them below in the comments. Happy to try and answer if they're software engineering or career related. And of course, if you don't want to leave a public comment, feel free to look for DevLeader on social media or Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn. DevLeader is my main YouTube channel where I have more edited down videos, C# tutorials, there's a podcast, and live streams every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Come on, Tesla, you can merge in. There is so much room for you. My goodness. The other thing I want to call out is if you're watching this video, you've already missed the live stream because it's tonight that I'm recording it and streaming it. But I'm going to be doing a live coding session where I make the landing page for Commute. That will become the new spot for submitting questions. So I think it'll be fun. We'll use Cursor, we'll use AI. We will have it somewhat vibe coded, if you will, and I think it should be fun. Okay, so pull request code reviews. I think that some of the things that they're kind of talking about in their post, I definitely agree with. This feeling of like people trying to get everything absolutely perfect in the pull request, and this feeling of like it's almost like wasted time or diminishing returns. And I actually do really agree with that. Don't get me wrong. I think that we want to strive to be having good high quality code in our code base. I don't think that we want to just like put slop in. I don't think that we want it to be garbage, but I think that there's a point of diminishing returns, and people more often than not are stepping way beyond that point of diminishing returns. So to give you an example, I think one of the things that I see like far too much of, and this is over the course of like roughly 15 years, I guess not quite, because of those years in internship I felt pretty lucky with reviews that work well. So let's say last 13 or so years, okay? So still over a decade, across startups, across big tech. So I work at Microsoft right now. One of the most common things I see where there is a tremendous amount of wasted time is on like white space and small stylistic things. Okay, so my perspective on this is that yes, we want to have consistent readable code. I totally get it, but I think that when we don't have these things codified, we end up having so much subjectivity brought in that you could be talking to one person and they're like, oh, change this so it's more readable. You talk to the next person, they're like, change it back so it's more readable. If if you're talking about stylistic things, or like white space at a minimum, if you're like, oh, you have 2 empty lines here, like, you know, resubmit it. If you're already having conversations like this, linters, right? Get something in place to be linting, have the same linting experience on your development machines so that you have that quick feedback, so that you know right in your IDE, this is our standard for readability, this is our standard for styling. If anyone's wasting time on that anyone's wasting time on that topic on top of what the linters already are doing, then I would say either 1, you're just literally wasting time, or 2, that's something that should probably be discussed to have put into your linter. Because if that's a recurring conversation, like, optimize your process. It's just wasting more time on 2 levels. 1 is like, I don't think that it's that valuable most of the time, like white space in particular. It just come on. But beyond that, there's going to be some stylistic things, like I said, that are quite subjective, and I think you're hitting diminishing returns like crazy. However, if you do think it's that important, it's a common thing where most of the team agrees on it, but it's not quite consistent yet, codify it, get it into your linter, be done with it. It's just no longer a time sink in a review. I think that when people get frustrated by the amount of time that reviews take, and they start talking about them, or it seems like they're pushing them in the direction of like, can you just sign off on this? Like, I'm putting code up, can you just approve my pull request, instead of, can you review it and get the feedback? I think that when this happens, it's basically a frustration of my perception of this is a frustration of like the value that's being added. Okay, so if people are putting code up and they're basically like, you know, the mindset is like, it sucks to put it up for review, people are just going to waste time on this, I'm just going to get like nitpick kind of stuff, and like, just approve it. I'm putting it up, it's good, it works, approve it. I think if you're in this mindset already, you're not getting the value out of your pull requests that we are probably striving for. Okay, so 1, like I was saying already on like the stylistic stuff, like honestly, I think that's the lowest value that you could possibly contribute to a pull request, because a lot of that can be automated through linters. So that's a low value thing that takes up a lot of time. I'm not saying that there's 0 value. I understand consistency, readability, but the return I feel like is ridiculously low for the time that goes into it. I think that if that's where review comments are like starting and stopping, like either everyone's got like amazing code and everyone's on the same page, which is incredible, super cool, but I think that that's pretty rare to have in teams. Okay, so I have been fortunate enough to work with the same small group of people for, you know, a good few years, I don't know, five or so years, like straight, and our reviews basically got to the point where we're reading them and the feedback is like, it's so minimal. It would be like, hey, nitpick, you have a typo here, hey, I see you added these test cases, what about this one or something? But like, they're very small, not like, hey, like, you got to go redesign this thing. And I think that probably the more common case is that you have this type of situation where, aside from the stylistic stuff, people are like, hey, this isn't the right pattern, or we've moved on from this, or this is risky because it doesn't consider X, Y, or Z. If you're finding that you are in this state and you're getting frustrated by pull requests and code reviews, like, in my opinion, that is one of the huge value adds, but I think there's like a good like buzz phrase for this. I think it's shift left is I think what people call it. Instead of getting to the point where you're putting code up for review, it's a pull request, and then for the first time people are going through this and being like, hey, I know you just spent a week on this and it works from everything that you've done and tried out, and you've written tests for it, but like, don't like this pattern, or this pattern has a flaw, or whatever, right? Basically go back to the drawing board for some or all of it. sorry, got someone driving like a complete idiot in front of me. If there's a lot of space in front of you and you're riding your brake, maybe you shouldn't be in the fast lane. So if you're finding that you're in that kind of situation, I would recommend that it's not that reviewing code is the wrong thing, or it's bad that you're getting feedback. I think those are all really awesome things. But I think the frustration is that, again, it's like wasted effort. Okay? It's like the amount of time and effort that went into something and then the return that you're getting. It's like the wrong mechanism. I think they work really, really well when everyone's on the same page, or you're trying to get people up to speed to get in the rhythm of stuff. But the challenge is that if you go off and write some code, you're designing a solution for something, and then the first time that people see what you're trying to go build is after you've spent like days on it. I don't know what even the right threshold is. Like, I could imagine being frustrated after hours, but let's go with days, right? You start on a Monday and it goes up for review on a Friday, and now you have your colleagues being like, "Ooh, like, I don't know, man, you should probably rewrite it this other way." That's gonna feel like shit. You just wasted a whole week. And I shouldn't say completely wasted. There's probably a lot of value, but it's gonna feel not great. Go back to the drawing board. We need to consider a different design for this. You implement, maybe the concept is right, but the implementation is sort of not what people would recommend based on design patterns and stuff that are established. So what do we do about that? Well, back to the buzz phrase, like shift left. Like, how can you have that conversation sooner? Right? You can use the same tools and have the conversation sooner by doing like a draft PR, right? Do a little bit of it. Have like a couple of classes or functions or something you push up and explain, like, this is the direction I'm thinking about going. That might not even be a good tool because you want to have a discussion about it. And maybe the amount of discussion that has to go into those choices, like writing them back and forth in a comment on a review, even though it's draft, is not effective. So maybe you do it like a lightweight design doc, or just like a brainstorming session and talk through it. Maybe you do a hybrid, right? Maybe you get your draft pull request up. It's like super lightweight. It's like a skeleton of the approach you want to take. You don't have like a lot of the methods implemented. It's pretty empty. Or you have pseudocode written down like in comments or something. I don't know, like super lightweight. And then you go have a meeting about it. So you send it out in your draft and you say, here's how I'm thinking about doing this. And like, you're already anticipating there's going to be some pushback or some concern. Here's the link, review it. We'll have this conversation tomorrow after people have had some time to review it. And then we'll walk through it and like raise any concerns. Maybe you send it out and people review it asynchronously and there's no feedback and you can cancel the meeting. But like, point is, how can you get this feedback sooner without putting a lot of effort in? Right? What's the minimum amount of time and effort that you can put into something to get the feedback you need that it's in the right direction? And I would just urge people to consider this kind of thing, regardless of, I'm giving you some examples of how you could like physically go implement it, but I don't mean to prescribe that. I just mean to put the ideas in front of you, right? That's a couple of ideas for how you could go approach it. My point is, if you're finding that there's a lot of wasted time and effort in a pull request, try to get the answer sooner, right? It's the way that you might be trying to lean into your tools, like pull requests and code reviews, the way that you're trying to leverage them might just not be effective. And it doesn't mean that they're bad, it just means that they're not being effective for how you're trying to use them. So you can either improve the code review and pull request, process that you have, or look at adding in other things that kind of supplement it so that by the time you get to the pull request and code review, that those problems are mitigated or reduced. So I think that's my major piece of advice here, like to summarize it, right, is that these types of processes, I think, can be extremely beneficial for getting consistency in the code base, for making sure that there's the right eyes looking at things, spot checking stuff, all sorts of added value. Now, you might say not the right tool for those things. That's fine. I'm just saying I think it is a tool. I think it can add a lot of value. But I also have seen, like, time and time again, like, super ineffective usage of code reviews. And like I said earlier, the number one that I see that's a time sink is just like stylistic stuff. And I wonder, maybe this person who wrote this Reddit post, maybe that's kind of, they've seen more stuff like that where the value add from the reviewers is so low that they're like, why do we do this? That's why they're saying things like, this is important, I gotta push it through. I get that feeling. I just think that it's kind of poor poor wording, and the reasoning is not really justified in that case, because it's not properly explaining what's actually happening. What else? I know some of the comments that were coming back on, like, from other Redditors were around this idea of like, push it through, we'll fix it later, and everyone's like, oh yeah, like, good joke. There's never a fix it later, like, this is like the end. Once it goes in, it'll never change. Make a ticket to file it for tech debt, and like, it's always going to be scheduled like the last thing. And I get it. And I want to just give you like maybe a different perspective. If you were to land that code and it wasn't the best, right? Like, it's good, but there's like this idea of like, hey, we can follow up and make it a little better for next time, right? And then people are up in arms about that. There isn't going to be a next time. Maybe a different perspective on that, if that work is always going to be prioritized the lowest, is maybe it's because it's actually not important. I know that's like, people aren't going to like that, but maybe it really doesn't actually matter. Right? I just want to put it out there. Then you could obviously extrapolate what I'm saying and say, well, if this keeps happening, we're going to have a million different patterns, the code base degrades. Man, your code base is going to degrade anyway. That might accelerate it. I'm not arguing that. But my point is, like, if you're very upset that like your tech, and this is a whole different conversation, if you're upset that your tech debt doesn't get addressed, there's I've made videos on this. There's probably a good handful of reasons for it, but one of them is perhaps that from a business perspective and the time that goes into that, it might just not be worth it, man. And I think that sucks for a lot of people to hear. I say this like with confidence too, because I've been an engineering manager for just under 13 years, but the first 8 years that I was an engineering manager, I was also writing code with my team, right? I was also in the code base, actively working with, the other engineers on my team. I was writing code across teams. I was in some of those conversations with other teams where, having conversations with the product owner, some of the project managers, and, having conversations with the developers and the PMs where they're like, developers want tech debt, PMs aren't scheduling it, what do we do? And like the biggest thing there is like, the PMs don't understand the value of doing the tech debt, right? And the engineers can't explain the business value of doing it. You're not speaking the same language. How the hell are you ever going to expect a PM to prioritize tech debt that you've not explained the value of over a new feature or bug fix that they know they're getting flack for? They will never do it, and I don't blame them. So if you're like, okay, we're gonna, back to the code review example, like, sure, we'll go address it later, and then you're all sour that like that tech debt's never gonna get addressed. Tell us what the value is. So my take on that kind of stuff is like, I agree if you have patterns that are completely divergent, or you kind of moved away from one. So let's say it's one thing to introduce a new pattern, because I think that if there's merit to it, that might be something that you say, like, this could be the new pattern going forward. But if there's an old pattern that's being reintroduced, like someone copied it from a spot that is legacy because the patterns have diverged, then I would say that might be good grounds for like, hey, like, we should go back and try to clean that up. But again, it's like, what's the ROI on that? Because if it's quick to go back and change it, sure. If it seems like more of a nitpick, then sometimes I would say, like, I would literally say in the comments, if you're already going back to correct some other things, then go address this too. I generally, like, my code review comments are mostly like, if you're not going backwards on, design decisions, like stuff that we've kind of deemed like that's not a good pattern, or it's not completely busted, like, or super risky, like you've missed the mark on it, most of my comments are going to be nitpick. And it's like, I don't give a shit if you go back and fix them. Be like, for next time, I have to sneeze. Pardon me. Double whammy. For next time, like, it might be good to keep that in mind. Like, I would encourage you, learn from this one, next time go do it. And only if you're going back into the code to go fix something up, then consider it. But, I make it very, very clear in my comments, like, this is just a nitpick, and then, like, don't block your review on this, or basically, like, I think that this is really risky. But I find that those types of comments these days are, a lot less frequent. So be curious. I'm almost at work. I think everyone has different perspectives on code reviews and pull requests. At the end of the day, we're trying to build good software. We're trying to make sure that we can keep our agility up in terms of developing. We want to make sure that we can keep our code base from falling apart sooner rather than later. It's always going to happen, though, eventually. Degrades over time. But sometimes you can keep it together. So be curious in the comments if you have different thoughts on this. Would love to hear. Always looking for healthy debate. So, like, if you're going to be rude about, like, I think you're stupid and whatever, and, like, here's your own perspective, like, that's probably going to get blasted because I don't like being insulted. But if you are open to a constructive conversation, I love hearing different perspectives. And sometimes I'm reading when people have comments and I'm like, oh, I agree with that. Maybe how I communicated something when I'm just kind of stream of consciousness talking here, maybe I didn't do a good job, or I forgot to mention that or something. So it's always really cool to hear different perspectives. So, and I definitely appreciate all of you that are active in the comments. It's really cool to see people that come back, watch the videos, and have their own experiences to share, right? I always try to remind people, like, I am just one dude. My goal is to help provide different perspectives, but I got mine, and I do my best to try and share others, but it's not always going to be captured. Like, this video was probably pretty biased, right? But that's why I do invite you to share. But I think that's it. We should have a bunch of videos this week. And I'll see you next time. Take care.